Hey, this moment counts, this quarter counts, this year counts, and the goals we set and the trade-offs we make count. That level of acceptance is almost a spiritual thing, like really accepting where you are, including limitations, especially limitations.
Now, in hindsight, looking at it as an owner of an apartment building makes me feel like I could have been dreaming about this for decades and never done it. On some major goals, I hit the target and exceeded the target. I don't think that would have been possible without the 12-week yearbook.
So the core idea behind the 12-week year is that the authors make the point that when we plan for a whole year, we basically trick ourselves into thinking that we have all this time, which leads to procrastination and poor follow through. I know when I'm planning for the year, I'm like, oh, I have plenty of time. I can fit everything. I can write a book. I can get in shape. I can blah, blah, blah. And then you think you have so much time, so you don't start anything. And then soon enough, you look up and it's the middle of September or something. And it's like, I didn't make nearly as much progress. Now I'm in a hurry, and I'm scrambling to make things work during the last quarter of the year. So the authors, Brian Moran and Michael Lennington, suggest flipping this on its head instead of annual planning by treating 12 weeks like it's your entire year. And to them, this creates way more urgency and focus because you're working with compressed timelines. So instead of saying I can fit everything in, you actually have to make choices. The system's pretty straightforward. You pick 2 or 3 specific goals for each 12-week period, which is roughly a quarter. Then you build out weekly plans where each week builds on the previous one. And you track everything with weekly scorecards, and you stay accountable through regular check-ins with an accountability buddy or group. What I found is that, by removing the psychological distance of, I have 12 months to make this whole thing work, you actually execute way better and you get more done in shorter time frames. And it's kind of like surprising.
It's surprising on how much you can get accomplished.
Yeah.
And then also, as you were describing that, I think this book is particularly relevant to a corporate setting. I think it makes a lot of sense because at the time I was working in a corporate job that had annual goals, annual statements that each department puts out that the person who supervises that department reviews. And then we also had annual performance reviews. So it was a really systematized, annualized goal setting, path. And when you apply 12-week year to that, it's incredible. But just like the actual goals that I chose were more personal goals. And so then it sometimes turned into a really good to-do list.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, when I was still in corporate at the time, people would wonder why I would get so excited about quarterly goals. They weren't even setting quarterly targets. And I was like, ooh, can't wait to get started, like planning out next quarter. It was like a fresh start. It was 4 New Year's resolutions per year. It's great. Before finding this book, I thought I had goals. I thought I was ambitious. I ended up going on a date, and there was a group of people over at someone's house, and my date showed me her goal book, and she pulled it out from the bookshelf, and it was well worn. It wasn't in some attic somewhere. It was easily accessible. She pulled it open, and it was like a scrapbook, and she had pages, and this is not an empty scrapbook. She had pages and pages. So she started pointing out the goals that she had already accomplished and the ones that she was looking forward to, and this was her project book for her own life. And she was very proud of it. And I was like, by comparison, but B, by comparison, I was like, I don't have anything even close to that. My goals are not defined. It's just get better over time. And so that was the extent of my goals. I don't know, make more money, be more healthy, do more things. And that was it. So that really kind of started me on the journey of all right, let me Google a bunch of things, let me find, and that's kind of how I found my way to this book. So mine was pretty low. What was your system for keeping track of goals, and how did you do that on your side?
For me, the SMART goal setting system, where there has to be specific and measurable and all, when you're doing corporate retreats or you're meeting with your department and you're setting for the year, that's usually kind of what you look for, is just being really specific and saying the goal out loud. That SMART goal setting system, because every book that I read said to do that. And just, at that time when we first started reading the book, I was going back in our emails and I realized this is 2017 when this is going on. The first round that we did this. And what's crazy is that some of these goals I haven't hit. Okay. So I'm looking at 2017 and I'm like, dang, that was a good goal I set. Did not hit that one, and why? Now I want to go back and analyze why. But prior to that, I had a lot of studying Tony Robbins and other gurus like that. And they always said, set your goal, visualize it, see it happening, be really specific about it, and then have metrics. Measure. Make sure
Hmm.
you're having something to say, I have this amount of net worth, I'm going to that amount of net worth, this is how I'm going to get there, or whatever the program is. I want to be this healthy because I'm going to be able to lift this many weights and whatever. Obviously, I'm like a workout person because I can really describe that really well. Um,
You nailed the lingo. You nailed
yeah,
it. Don't
for sure.
worry.
But that's kind of what it was before, was just, okay, I need to be specific, and I need to say it out loud and define it. So writing it down would happen. I can think of one case in particular. When I graduated from law school, I was looking for a job and I met a lawyer, seasoned lawyer, and she told me just write down exactly what it is that you want in the job. So rather than just browsing job descriptions on Indeed, actually write it yourself. This is the target job that I'm looking for. And it seems so basic now in hindsight, because that's kind of how my psychology works now. But at that time, early 20s, you're just kind of like, okay. And then I wrote it down, and then it actually came to life in that way. So that was a really good lesson in goal setting. So that's kind of how I did it before. It was just more
Nice.
basic. It wasn't as structured as the 12-week yearbook.
I think I was mostly to-do list driven, and maybe I would get kind of caught up in a project or something like that. But I just, like I was saying, I didn't really have many. I missed the S in the SMART goals, so I was not very specific, and certainly not measuring them. And so I think that was such a big difference. Like starting out with the 12-week year, it was actually a challenge to choose, to actually say I want this specific thing, and
Yeah.
instead of like, oh, I just want everything to be a little bit better. It was
Yeah.
actually challenged to like narrow it down and stuff. It was more challenging, but it made the whole thing more real, because once I could narrow it down, I'm like, oh, it's not going to take an infinite amount of time to reach this goal, because I'm not trying to reach all goals. I'm trying to reach one goal, and it's well defined. And so then it's actually a problem that I can like play with, and I can challenge my assumptions, and I can like grow towards and stuff like that. So things became much more achievable and approachable, and I got to feel the sense of progress. I think otherwise I would feel the sense of progress with things like work projects and like little mini projects I would set, but not my own life defining kind of big goals and stuff. So yeah, that's I think how the 12-week year ended up feeling a little bit different. I had set some goals for like, I want to start a business someday, and I had started a couple businesses before that. So those felt more like projects for me. Those were kind of goals. But yeah, if I looked back, I didn't have some place in my personal life where I organized what my goals are, where I could look at the list and see how I'm doing on any of them. They were just kind of floating around on scraps of paper or in my head or something. So it
Yes.
really
You
was
know
this
what?
book.
That's a really
Yeah.
good point. It was this maybe someday kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
certainly when I was in high school and in college, I had lists of goals for different types of things. I had a list of qualities that I wanted in, a romantic partner, right? I had,
I also have one of those lists. We should talk about this. I was just showing it to a friend. It's okay.
I
Excellent.
mean, I actually came across one that I wrote, I mean, so long ago, and I'm like, wow, I really checked off pretty much all of these. Is amazing when you write it down. Definitely this maybe one day kind of vibe versus having a book that tells you this is how you get to it, actually measuring it along the way.
This is why frameworks are great, right? They kind of give you, yeah, they give you a framework to approach something that's challenging, could be big and amorphous and stuff like that. Like I think it kind of changed my view of time in a few different ways. Like one, um, having an accountability buddy check in made things
Absolutely.
real. The fact that I knew that I had a call and I did not want to show up empty handed, my ego, like it's positive use of the ego. My ego will not tolerate showing up and saying like I have accomplished zero progress towards the
Yeah.
thing that I claimed that I was going to finish. And so you and I both know there were probably mad scrambles the night before or even the
Yeah.
morning before our calls, like getting it done. And it's amazing how little time it would actually take to make progress on the goals when there was a check-in, just sneaking it in before the deadline. It was like, really? I just procrastinated all week and then snuck it in before the deadline.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that made things real. And there was like a little bit of a social penalty for not delivering. like not imposed by the other person, but like, I don't want to feel bad. And so it's a nice motivator of like, of that. So, yeah. And one other thing I noticed that kind of changed, thanks to this book, was my idea of planning changed. Like the idea of making a 12-week plan, and you actually plan out each week, week one, week two, blah, blah, blah. And the idea that I got from it was that, you can only do actions from week two by accomplishing the actions in week one.
Right.
It's like an actual chain and stuff. And it made the whole thing feel more real. It wasn't just racking up lists of like, well, let me spend this much time. Let me spend 30 minutes practicing French. Like, sure, that's the thing, but it doesn't have that same feel of making a plan where like, okay, I reached this milestone, and then from that milestone, I reached this other one, and then from there, another one. And so I think making that kind of linked plan, yeah, just changed the feeling of my own goals.
There's a difference between actually moving towards the goal and just doing tasks within the category of the goal, because it's not really productive until you're checking it off and saying, okay, now I'm fluent in Spanish, or now I can have a conversation because I specifically identified that I was going to be able to have a conversation with a stranger, be able to talk about these particular topics, whatever, rather than 5 minutes of Duolingo a day,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really get you there. I've worked in companies where people have stayed with the company for a long time. There are career corporate people. And when you look back on their entire corporate career, it's like sometimes there's a big claim to fame, and sometimes it's kind of just like a mundane corporate existence. And so I
Mm.
knew starting out in the corporate world, I did not want to reach the end of 20 or 30 years and look back on my career and say, well, I kind of helped out in the legal department. I wanted it to be like I achieved this big, huge, like paradigm shifting achievement. And that was in year one. And in year two, I did this. And in year three. And so if every year I just did one major thing, then at the end of a career, I could say, wow, I was responsible for really making a difference and really improving this place before I left. And the same thing in my life. If it's like this gradual improvement that I was kind of on that path, that only does so much, right? But if it's actually goals I set for myself, I'm going to acquire at least one real estate property per year. That's an actual measurable goal. At the end of 30 years, I should have at least 30 properties. It's going to be really obvious at the end of it whether I did that or I didn't do that, because you can't cram. You can't cram at the end of 10 years. You can't cram at the end of a 20-year career or a 30-year career, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you set yourself up, like you said, we have these weekly check-ins and we're calling each other and making sure we're holding each other accountable. I'm okay to cram on Thursday morning before I know I have to call you and face you at 10 a.m. Yeah, then I
yeah.
crammed. Now the next week I crammed, and the next week. And so then at the end of the 12 weeks, it's like, okay, I actually moved the needle.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like bite-sized versions, but you can't cram the whole year in or something like that. But you can definitely push, let's say, to deliver right before the deadline and stuff. I really like what you mentioned about the how you kind of structure your idea of future accomplishments and things. Like they're cumulative. Like you're gonna nail this one and then do. So they're kind of on a there's a rhythm to them that I like. It's not just like far off one day, one huge goal. It's like nail this one this year and then nail this one the next year and nail this one the next year. So I tended to pick three, maybe four goals. I tended to try to get them into different domains of life so that they weren't kind of overlapping. Like one definitely had to be a work goal. One was probably going to be health related or something like that. And then one was probably a personal skill or like upskilling in some area. And yeah, I found those to be actually really helpful. Like upskilling in a specific area is great. Get a training course or enroll in something. I did kind of a career shift. I shifted from software engineering to product management. So I put myself through a course and did this other stuff. And so I found those to be really effective and very specific. And then there were some times, which maybe we'll get to a little later, when I set kind of poorly defined goals, and of course they didn't really work out because they were fuzzy to begin with. So I'm curious if there's any there's any goals or kind of directions that stood out to you that are coming to mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole fuzzy to begin with thing really strikes a chord with me because if I didn't clearly define it at the beginning, I sure didn't hit it at the end.
Exactly. Yeah.
For me, also, the health goals were easy to drop because they weren't measurable in the sense of this is a starting point and this is the ending point. It was more like, okay, I'm going to develop a good habit. And
Hmm.
by develop a good habit, I mean I'm going to do these things daily, every day for 7 days until I talk to my accountability buddy again. And then I'll just measure. And I noticed we did that, the scoring system, percentage wise, how
Hmm.
many of 7 days were done. And then okay, I was 43% on week one, 50% on week two, 60% on week three. Sure, I improved, but I don't know if that got me to my goal because I wasn't really clear on the goal. What was the goal? Be healthier? Like I literally
Yeah.
have that as one of my goals, and it was approaching COVID. My 2020 Q1 goals were like come out of the other end of coronavirus healthier, wealthier, and wiser. And so I had a healthy category, a wealthy category, and a wise category. And it was just too vague and blobby. So nothing really resulted from that.
It's almost like there's some goals that they're aspirational, but kind of not in a good way. Like, ooh, I should want this, or I should be better at this. But there's not like we haven't actually made the direct link. I'm reminded early on in the 12-week year book, one of the early exercises is like to create this 1 year, 3 year, 5 year vision, something like that. Maybe it's even further. Maybe it's 5, 10,
That's
15.
right.
I found that extremely challenging. And part of it was to like get down to, especially the 10 or 15. It's like, okay, add 10 years to your current age. You are now that age. And I'm like, I don't want to think about that at all, man.
Right.
But it's to make it real. It's to make it like, okay, this moment counts, this quarter counts, this year counts, and the goals we set and the trade-offs we make count. And I think for some of these aspirational things, like when we're like, I should want this, or oh, it would be nice. Like we're not actually connected to that real thing in our own vision.
Was probably the most powerful exercise in the book was the
Hmm.
visualization. And often in my 12-week year goals, I would put as one of the tasks within the weekly achievements, it would be visualize this particular outcome. So
Hmm.
sometimes it worked, but
Yeah.
to be honest, I wasn't visualizing myself speaking in Spanish, but I'm
Right.
sure if I did, I would have gotten there, right? Like the goals that
Yeah.
I really took seriously, I got closer to. I got closer to
Yeah.
achieving more quickly. But the goals I didn't really follow, and it was more of, you know, I think we ended up doing the 12-week year process for years, right? So
Hmm.
every quarter, it's like re-upping on goals. Sometimes it's repeating goals from a prior quarter. But because it went on for years, it's like it doesn't have that same freshness. And I think that was a lot of the hindrance I had on meeting some of my goals. So some of the goals, I mean, I knocked out of the park and I'm really proud of looking back on now. But then some of them, like the ones that we dropped, it's like I probably shouldn't have even had those in there in the first place to distract me from
Right.
the main goal. Back to that analogy about the corporate career. If you have 100 things you want to accomplish, it's basically just a to-do list. But if you actually
Hmm.
have the one big thing that matters and makes a difference and improves your life, then you achieve that one thing and it takes you 12 weeks to get there or it takes you 24 weeks to get there. It feels really good at the end. Like I did that. I mean,
Yeah.
the apartment building is like a huge, huge one for me. Like it was just seeing that on my to-do list and on my goal setting and talking with you about it regularly that now in hindsight, looking at it as an owner of an apartment building makes me feel like I could have been dreaming about this for decades and never done it. But because it was on this, you know, sheet of paper in front of me very clearly, undeniable, there's a did you do it or not aspect of that.
Hmm.
It's not, oh, I feel and want and wish and desire to be an apartment owner. No, it's like, are you? Do you own a building or no? Right? And
Yeah.
so it just like makes me feel proud because on the end of the project, it's actually done. Right.
Yeah. I'm also remembering, I don't want to tell your story for you, but like one of your very first goals, like the one around the getting your license. Was that the very first like 12-week year session?
I think
I'm
so.
pretty sure it was.
I
Um,
forgot about it until this morning. Yeah.
really, yeah, I remember that. That's my kind of, I don't know. I end up bragging on behalf of you. I'm like, okay, so my accountability partner, she did this. It becomes the most dramatic story of just like, okay, you had been wanting to do it for some number of years, and then finally wrote it down and did it. So,
Because you held me
um,
accountable. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. So maybe you can. Do you want to tell that story a little bit? Like,
I wanted to get my broker license in California, my real estate broker license. The path was a little easier for me because I already was a licensed attorney. And so California makes it easier for you to become a real estate broker if you already have your bar card. I knew I wanted a real estate broker license so that I could save money on commissions, become a member of different MLS so that I could
yeah.
access homes. So I had a really good reason for wanting to become a broker, and I had a very clear path to doing it. And it was really easy to define what needed to be done and achieved to get there because there was a course booklet and a CD, if this freaking puts a date on things. I had a CD I was listening to in my car as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
audio study session, golly. And it made it very easy to track and measure and get there. And so to set that as the goal, I think for years on end, I said, I'm going to become a broker, but then another year would pass and another year would pass. So then at this 12-week year, you proposed to me, should we try to achieve this in 12 weeks instead of in 12 months? And so I'm like, that's crazy. Let's do it. And by the end of the 12 weeks, I had my broker license and I physically had the letter that said, congratulations, you're a California real estate broker. And so that feels really good at the end of it. Like it simply was procrastination, and it's like I'm going to get to the other side of this goal one way or the other. So I can either delay or I can have it done. There was nothing in the way. It was just, this is the target. I'm going to hit it.
I think you nailed this goal like midway through the quarter. So it didn't take all 12 weeks. Like you kind of nailed it and I remember you calling and be like, "Okay, it's done." How did I wait this long? It was like this crazy
Yeah.
moment for you. Like, how did I wait this long to do this?
Yeah.
And yeah, because clearly you've passed much more difficult tests than that as an actual practicing attorney.
You know what's
So yeah,
funny
that was
about
just
that?
like seemed like, huh.
It took 8 hours. That's how long it took because the
Hmm.
training course was an 8 hour CD audio. And you take a few practice tests, okay. But at the end of it, you really just have to memorize a certain amount of information and pass a multiple choice test. I guess you can make it harder, you can make it easy. And the 12-week year made it
Yeah,
easy.
nice
What's
to
one
get
of
on
your
stuff.
favorite goals that you chose?
I think it was probably it was I think it was initiating a career shift. I was kind of burnt out on writing code 8 hours a day and just being a software engineer and working the way I worked, and I was more into business and design, and I found out that product management is this wonderful blend of all three of these things, and I had never done a major career shift, so I was like, okay, let's go enroll in some 8 or 10 week training course and do a bunch of practice projects and really take it seriously. And yeah, I did that, went out, got another job, negotiated it, got a somewhat inflated title, and that was what I was looking for. So and made the shift over to the product world and got to do that. So I think that one was career wise just the clearest, and then I executed on it and got it done. And yeah, I was really proud of that. And I think I need to go back into the archives because I've got a binder around here with all our old 12-week year stuff. I used to print them out every quarter.
I remember the binders and the papers and the printouts and everything, and that we would actually meet up in person and have
Oh yeah.
sessions where we would just be brainstorming and planning out the next quarter and reflecting on the prior quarter and often reviewing the book and our favorite parts of the book, our
Yeah.
favorite tactics, seeing how we could improve on those tactics. Man, we were like super nerdy about it. I had these huge post-it notes on the wall that I would look at every day. So I wake up and it's the first thing that I would see. Keystone
Keystone
actions.
actions.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, that was part of the trouble for me was that I would add in keystone actions. So at the top of 12 weeks, week one, I had the vision of what week 12 looked like and what achieving that goal looked like and what each week's keystone actions were. So I would get into like week 3 and 4, I'd start adding in more, like shoving in extras, like, well, I need to research this a little more, or I should network a little bit more. I didn't realize that I needed to reach out and do this. When in reality, I should have just left the action items as what they were and did I achieve them or not. And so maybe there's
Mm,
extra work you have to do to get there and just done that. But instead, I was kind of lenient with myself. Oh, I'm going to add these extra check boxes, and then I'm going to count these check boxes towards my percentage
right.
achievement, which isn't really getting me to where I needed to be at the end of 12 weeks.
There was some padding of the stats at a certain point. I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm like, ooh, let me stuff this with some things that I do feel good about accomplishing. They
Yeah,
weren't on my initial kind of plan, but I
yeah,
did accomplish them and I want credit for them. And then
yes.
like suddenly the score looks a little bit better than it should have. I think
Okay.
that's one of the gaps is you do the vision and then it doesn't really seem to be referenced later on when you're doing the 12 weeks of check-ins, making the 12-week plan itself and then executing it on every week and scoring and all this other stuff. So I think I found that the book felt a little bit light on examples for planning. Book authors love to do this. They make space as if you're going to write in the actual book and like do your planning on the actual book.
Yeah.
But it was just like a couple boxes and it's like, great, now your goals are planned. And I was like,
Now go
I'm
take over the
sorry.
world.
I'm no, like I need more structure. And I would love to see examples in modern day. I would love to see how different people plan different types of projects. What does a health goal look like? That's different. It might involve 15 minutes of daily exercise versus another sort of project that has milestones that need to be delivered versus something else. I don't know. I'd love to see that. And it kind of like assumes that you already know how to plan effectively. I've got ADHD. Like sometimes it works for me, sometimes it does not. Sometimes I'm hyper organized, and sometimes I, can't find, my note from 5 minutes ago. So I think it's kind of a heavy burden for inexperienced planners or people who aren't very organized. Um, so I think that's one of the gaps that I found.
I think that as time went on, it became easier for me to show up unprepared.
Yep,
So
same.
at the beginning, I didn't know you very well, and I've always been someone who cares about external approval or accountability from outside sources. I've always responded really well to that, more
Yeah,
so than holding myself accountable. So, for instance, if I'm going to go to yoga class or go to the gym or something, I can easily stand myself up, but I will not stand up
right.
a friend if I told them I'm going to meet them at an exercise class. So, for you, when we were saying, okay, I'll call you on Thursday, make sure you're doing it. And then even, before we got to the 7 day mark on the weekend, we're texting each other, hey, are you on that? Did you do the first thing you said you were going to do? And then when it comes around to the week, sure, we're cramming, but we're there. So
Yeah,
Q1, man, we were on it, okay? Because we're
on it.
like just getting to know each other and we want to show up as these productive, highly effective people.
Yeah,
And
no
then,
slouches here. No
no,
slouch. Yeah.
right? You know me, you're like, as you're getting to know me, you're going to know how amazing I am, right? Then we get to know each other for like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and I'm like, we have a call, but
Eh.
hey, can we push the call? Hey, can we just report via email this time? I
Mm,
was at 43%, and
yeah.
I think that it's not a gap in the book per se. I actually don't remember how it says to choose your accountability person. Do you remember?
I don't think it really provides much guidance to that, but
Okay.
I mean, if I would have to write that section, it would be someone that you would get that feeling like you want
Yeah.
to live up to their expectations kind of thing or something like that.
More intentional selection of the accountability partner and maybe changing that person throughout time. So you alternate. So maybe every
Yeah.
other quarter you're using different people, or you have your same accountability partner, but it's a different technique that you're using. So every week I have to post it to Facebook, or I have to be
Mhm.
really public about what I'm doing. Something that adds that element of the initial, I want to impress, I want to be the person I said I'm going to be, rather than relaxing into, he's my friend, he'll
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
He'll be easy on me. And especially
That
you, like you're
was,
really
yeah.
good at pumping people up, like the pep talks and everything. I'm like, yeah, I am awesome, like at the end of the call, even though I only did 15% or something,
I wrote this down as a gap as well. I think it was probably the most significant gap is like I realized I started prioritizing, let's say the whole point was accountability, right? Accountability framework kind of thing. But I started prioritizing like, oh, I want to make sure that we all feel good. So it was like reassurance and like soothing behaviors and like that sort of, oh, it's okay. And it kind of became license to fail, for lack of a better, or license to not deliver, let's say that. And I was doing it for myself, and it was almost like that was the service I was providing and stuff like that, and it completely undermined the point of the program, or not completely undermined, but it like really undermined it. And I kind of struggled to find balance between like what are the extremes. On one extreme, someone comes and they say, oh, I only did 15%. Do you stand there in judgment and say, that is not good? Like, am I judgy? On the other extreme, is it like, oh no, that's fine. It doesn't matter anyway. Like it's just a number. Ha ha ha. Let's go like frolic and run off. Like there's no kind of consequence. Neither of those are right. So like what is the actual kind of standpoint of the accountability partner? I think I have a better sense of that's the question to be asking. Like it's not your role to be all judgy or critical of your partner, but it's also not kind of this licensing like and soothing and all this other stuff. So I'm curious. That's an open question, and I think the accountability pattern would be maybe if I figured that out, like then we wouldn't necessarily need to switch accountability partners because we could, unless we wanted to.
Do
Yeah.
do you
What do you think?
remember that we renamed you? So there was like a devilish
Oh my God.
Marcello. It wasn't even Marcel
We
anymore. I had to
did.
rename you and
Yeah.
re-character you so
Right.
that I would
So we could kind of
fear the
project on
calls.
him like, ooh, Marcello is going to be, mm,
Yes.
it's going to be very, very grumpy about this. Wow. Okay. Yes, we were
Yeah.
trying
So
some
we
things.
really tried.
Okay.
But it
Oh
was
my
so
God. Okay.
powerful because it makes such a difference in the actual achievement of the goal. And it ties back to my experience in the corporate world because as the years went on in my corporate profession, if I stayed with the same boss for years, then my perception of that boss and my relationship with that boss would become softer and
Right.
more friendly and more easygoing. And it stops being like boss, right? And where it's just like go, go, go. And it's like, I could get away with this. I could get away with
Right.
that. The reason why people can stay in a job for 30 years and look back and say, what did I do here?
I'm almost thinking of like almost like champions holding other champions, holding their teammates accountable. Like, their care for one another comes through in holding them to a high standard. Like, hey, I know you're better than this. It's not like a blame kind of thing, or it's not like a scold kind of thing, or like, hey, what's up? Like, can I help? I know that we're up here and we set these goals together and we're going to get here. We're going to get to the championship or something. I've been watching a bunch of sports recently. We're going to get to the championships. So it becomes, what can I help with in order to get up there instead of like, oh no, I want to make sure that you don't feel bad by looking at your failure straight in the face. So like, it's okay. Let's lower the standards. So it's like, love via raising the standards instead of love via relaxing them.
Yeah, I can dig it totally. It's making me
Mm.
think about Kobe Bryant and how he showed up for his
Yeah.
teammates during championships. After the games, his teammates would be out at the clubs and doing bottle service and all that. Kobe Bryant is not there. He is not out late drinking. He's going to be at the gym at 5 a.m. and he's going to be at your door at 4:30 a.m. knocking on your door. So, are you going
Yeah.
to be hungover or are you going to be ready to perform at the championship level? And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'm just putting this on myself now. I think that if I had been in a group of 12-week year people, at least this would work
Mm.
for 1 quarter for me. I don't know if it would work for
Hmm.
5 years, but it would work for 1 quarter. If I were in a group of 12-week year participants and it was a competition and we all saw the meter and where are you ranking and you came in at 20% but this person came in at 30% and this person's hitting 95% consistently every week, I might
Yeah.
feel that pressure, again the external pressure of what,
Yeah.
this person's going to hit his goal, I want to hit my goal.
Funny you should mention Kobe. Like his eyes are kind of like poking out might not be able to see it. I've got this book in the background of his book, so his eyes are kind of like watching over
Oh,
me
okay.
strangely in frame. Yeah. Anyway,
Perfect.
I'm reminded of used to work at a commercial real estate place. How they would sometimes structure the commission for real estate agents. Sometimes if they only gave individual commission to individual agents, then they would become cutthroat. They'd be like, I need to win. I need to get the bonus, and I'm gonna steal deals from other people. Like your biggest competition was down the hallway, not like in another company. And so what they ended up doing was they had to balance it because they were absolutely cutthroat. It's like that they had individual achievements, but then they also did something where they had like group achievements. So no one could get the bonus unless you supported your teammates in also hitting their marks. So it's something like that where it's a little bit of tough love, like, hey, I'm here to help you, but also, hey, you're affecting my money right now. So we're
I
taking this
love that.
seriously. It's like a supportive kind of thing. I'll spend all the time in the world coaching you because you are going to succeed because it affects my livelihood.
Man, this makes me want to do another 12-week year quarter because I think
Same.
we learned enough of the pitfalls to be able to avoid them for at least one quarter. And
Hmm.
especially the ones where it's like, if you see me falling off and I'm not hitting my target, you could literally reach out and be like, okay, Romy, you said you were going to delegate this task to a helper. Have you hired the helper? All
Yep.
right, well, let me go
Yep.
on Upwork for you. And then all of my guilt would
Oh.
kick in, and I'd be like, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want you to do that for me. I'll do it. I'll do it. So I
I mean,
like the shared
if I'm
goals too.
adding 14 days to today, then that is the 31st. There's no 31st. That is the beginning of the quarter. The vision was so powerful. It was the first time I had really done something like that, especially multiple years out into the future. Set a vision for 1 year, 3 years, five, maybe even 10. Um, but I think in the process, like I didn't check in with that as much. It didn't feel like it was baked in to the recurring weekly process. So maybe it was baked into the quarterly style, but I really needed to reconnect with that. All
Another
right.
one could be the productivity block. There were
Oh,
set hours that you're supposed to have to achieve these goals.
yeah.
And yeah, so what was it?
Strategic block, I think.
Strategic block, yes.
Yeah.
So basically, get rid of the excuse of the I don't have time for this
Mm.
because you just set the 2 or 3 hours on wherever you have emptiness in your schedule. So say it's Tuesday right after work, you have these 2 hours and you're going to get it done. And to be fair, if I can pass the real estate broker exam in 6 weeks when I put it off for 2 years, then this can be done, right? Or
Yeah.
if I can cram on a Thursday morning before our call and get it all done, then it can be done in the 2 hours if you set it aside after work on Tuesday, turn off your phone, don't check.
It would often show up on my calendar. It would be a specifically colored block on my calendar, like a certain purple I chose, but I'd blow right past it very
Why
often, or
do you
like
think?
move it around or something. I feel like there's a gap between the idea of it and what I needed to actually do. So maybe it's Tuesday at 10 a.m. and that's when I had it scheduled. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not going to have meetings. Like I've got uninterrupted time, but maybe there's something like I wasn't able to transition into it, or I didn't know what I was supposed to actually be working on. But there was some gap between the fact that I had a block of time in my calendar and the fact that I had kind of a goal somewhere on my weekly plan. And there was some sort of gap there that never quite got bridged. So not sure what it was. I think if I were to jump on it now, I probably wouldn't use the title strategic block. That's too abstract. It's like, be productive. Like if I put that on the calendar, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It has no
Right.
draw. I think I would need to schedule the actual task. I'd say I'd like accomplish this or like work on this and accomplish this and maybe even make myself a plan for it in the calendar description, event description.
Right. So back to the external accountability, it would probably help me to be live. It's a video call where we're both working on the actual thing we said we were going to work on.
Oh,
So we're each working on our individual strategic tasks and our keystone actions, but we have to see the other person working on it as well. And in reality, it would be everyone's at the table, everyone comes in the conference room and you're hammering it out and working on it. But because this virtual age, it could be done in that way where I'm seeing someone else working at the same time. I think that would work for me for at least a quarter because
hmm.
when I think about what I did to just snooze the calendar reminder of the strategic block, it was because I was like, okay, so I have this 2 hours set aside. I'm just going to be productive. And I would
Hmm.
immediately start going into like, well, first I need to read my newsletter that comes in because I haven't checked this email yet, or I'm going to log into my stock account. And well, I need to organize my desk before I get started. So,
Clearly.
all of these things are technically productive tasks where at the end of 2 hours, I'm like, wow, I actually did something today. But again, at the end of the year, at the end of the 12-week year, it didn't feel like anything actually got accomplished on those particular tasks. We're more adult in 2017, like
Yeah.
we should be 8 years smarter,
Yep.
8 years more
Certainly 8 years
wisdom.
more experience. Yeah. And more wisdom. We found out stuff that didn't work.
I think that simply having the stated goal set and talking to someone about it every week really did help me inch closer to my goals. On a lot of the goals, I came closer to the target. And on some major goals, I hit the target and exceeded the target. And I don't think that would have been possible without the 12-week yearbook.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was course correction happening. And when I look at the goals I was setting in 2018, for instance, my goal was I'm going to find a rental property in Los Angeles. So I have my broker's license. I'm going to look for properties. I'm going to network with local real estate investors, and I'm going to start getting a little bit of an income. And what that made me do was it made me be very specific about the reality. So then I was
Mm.
looking at actual homes in LA, doing actual math, and that is what got me to that next step where I decided this isn't right for me. I don't want a duplex in Inglewood. I thought I wanted a duplex in Inglewood. I did the math, and the cash flow each month was either in the red or it was like $50. And when I looked at the amount of money and time that would have to go into managing that, let alone all of the legal pitfalls that can happen just by being a landlord and property owner in LA County, it's it just wasn't the right direction. But because I wrote it out, it made me come to terms with the reality of the situation. Also, it made me do things that I wouldn't be doing otherwise, like going to the real estate investor networking meetups. And to be real, like, I don't think I went to very many. I think I went to three. But at the very first real estate investor meetup that I went to, supposedly to go network, which was one of my, strategic tasks, one of my intentions was network and meet people so I can get this duplex in Inglewood and I'm going to find sellers and I'm going to get pocket listings. And I get there and I shake a few hands and hand out business cards. And the keynote speaker just happens to be this guy who buys apartment buildings in Texas, big ones. And I'm like, that sounds super interesting. That sounds like I can make money go further. I don't have to spend as much. It's going to take me less time, less involvement. And the cash flow is way more than $50, at least at that time in 2018. It was, and it was growing. And so this being specific, setting the goal, going down this course of what the book was saying to do, got me in the room and helped me change that perspective. And that was a major paradigm shift for me in terms of real estate investing. So, I mean, I think this process because otherwise it would just be one of those vague, oh, I wish I had rental income kind of uh, desires into since 2018, I invested in over 2,000 apartment units. Changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oof. I got tingles. Okay. Yes. I, yeah, that really resonates with me. And I love what you said about, I don't think you used this phrase acceptance. You said, like kind of accepting the reality of the situation, or something like that. Like, yeah, I think that's a really powerful one because having to actually sit down and plan based on where you're actually at
Yep.
and what I'm going to do this week
Yes.
and what I'm going to show up next week saying I either did it or not. So it needs to be that specific. Like that level of acceptance, it's almost a spiritual thing, like really accepting where you are, including limitations, especially limitations. It takes no problem to like accept our strengths, right? But like accepting, okay, I don't have it all figured out right now. I do need to make a plan. I do need to form a network. I do need to do these small kind of like steps on the way up. It just makes it just brings like a lot of clarity. I'm often very good at starting things. I'm often very good at getting excited and seeing the big potential, but this is how it goes. The immediate term, like how to start it and how to get going and get excited about it, very clear. Like we can talk all day, I can start, I can launch, all these things. But then as it goes further out into the future, I'm like, yeah, I'll work out the details. And I don't bother to like kind of think through the details or even the steps. And part of me doesn't accept that I do actually need to deliver this thing to completion, not just perpetually start things or continually start things. And so I think the 12-week year process and framework, since it involves committing to a goal, since it involves scoping the goal down to something that is, ambitious but achievable within 1 quarter or within 12 weeks, requires a level of discipline and kind of sobriety in my otherwise excited, like, let's change the world, let's boil the ocean type of creative mindset.
Right, right.
So it requires like scoping it down and then making that plan such that if you execute the plan, you arrive at the goal. That's how I phrase it in my mind. Make a plan such that if you executed on the plan, you would arrive at the goal. And that's an interesting way of planning because it's not like try to list on one sheet of paper everything that you might possibly need to do. That's like the kitchen sink approach, like throw it all in. No, no, no. This is like, what is the plan where if you actually executed and delivered steadily by week 12, you would have accomplished your goal. And I think that level of clarity and acceptance, like really, really made things real. It kind of brought it out of fantasy and it made it, crisp, and I was able to visualize it and execute towards it. So I think that's the thing that helped out the most, the planning chain, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah.
Tell me a couple of other goals that you set during 12-week year. I know you were developing products.
Oh, yes. I did develop and launch. Yeah. So for work, I had some pretty intense ones where I decided to completely rebuild one of our core products. I was working at a commercial real estate company and I really wanted to learn some new technologies. And I had this very ambitious idea to rebuild our entire presentation platform. So I did that, delivered on it. It was great. Lots of late nights. I love a good fast-paced project. But there were definitely some times where I wanted to work on a specific exercise goal, and I actually hit it. Those were kind of more simple to plan because they were more like, just go to the gym 5 times a day. And I think, oh, that was one. I wanted to get into a gym habit. And the way I phrased it was instead of saying, oh, I have to spend 30 minutes in the gym or I have to do this much weight, I was like, I simply have to walk into the gym building, 6 times a week, let's say. There was one time when I was not feeling great. I'd like got there and I was feeling like physically ill. But I checked in, I scanned my little barcode, and I was like, you know what?
Counts.
I have actually achieved it. Like, I didn't stay in bed. And so like I have actually achieved this, but now I got to go home because I'm actually sick. And it got me into the habit. And there were some very strong kind of habit building ones. So I think maybe I'll follow up in a future episode with some more specifics. But I just remember it was wonderful to be able to focus on a low number of things, check in every single week, and make steady progress towards them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that. The biggest takeaway I have from that book and reflecting on it from this conversation is that really the next time I try the 12-week year, I will choose one goal. One. Because in the quarters that I chose multiple goals, instead of being targeted and actually moving forward on one, it was spread out amongst multiple goals, like all my efforts. So if I have a 2-hour strategic block, I'm touching on all these different points, but at the end of the 12 weeks, I didn't really achieve the thing.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think my kind of maybe final points, maybe not the key takeaway, but I'll say my final thoughts here are that this conversation is bringing up so many wonderful memories
for
of
sure.
getting able to, being able to collaborate with someone on my journey and on their journey and to contribute and cheer on and stuff like that, but then also provide some structure. And I think so often we are achieving alone. We achieve all these cool things and we make all this progress and stuff like it. And maybe our coworkers or our partners see us or something like that. But a lot of time it's like it's very alone. And so it feels good to both have some accountability, but also have some acknowledgement and like someone seeing us that like, hey, you really nailed it. Jesus, like, like
Yeah.
appreciating our wins with us and knowing the full context. This is probably the best example that I've found when you hear this advice to like always stay in the process and like the process is the most important thing. Like I'm really feeling into the power of this process. It's simple, it's got some simple building blocks, but like um when performed faithfully and stuff like that, it is just incredibly valuable and incredibly effective. And so yeah, that's kind of like sinking in. And I think I'm also setting myself up for a quarter for this
Yes,
upcoming quarter to re-engage with it. So yeah, I don't
for
know if that was the
sure.
goal, but mission accomplished on that one. Yeah.
I think that I think this book made a huge impact on my life. I mean, just seeing the words 12 WKYR makes me feel more productive. If I don't have the stated goal, I don't feel like a high achiever. Time just goes. And COVID's
Yeah.
a really good example of this because it was easy to let a few years go by and not really, you look back and you're like, what happened? What happened during these
Hmm.
3 years? And a huge motivator for me is at the end of 12 weeks, say, or at the end of an actual year, will I feel good or not as good if I achieve this thing or don't achieve this thing? And next year, can I face myself? Can I tell myself, okay, I still haven't done the one thing that I said I was going to do last year? What did I do? I mean, whatever. I scrolled reels. I checked my emails a billion times. I checked my, accounts and I filed my taxes. You know what I mean? I did a
Yeah.
ton of
Yeah.
research. I looked into a bunch of stuff. I read these books. I asked ChatGPT to analyze a million different ways. But did I put into practice what I learned from all of that? And did I actually execute to get to a result? And that's the
Yeah.
main driver. That's how I've been making these big decisions. The biggest decision that I made last year was to have a child. And that is something I've been putting off for many years. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like a huge decision. And there was a lot that went into that. And obviously, it's a joint decision and a community decision, my family community and all of that. And it was just a matter of me really sitting with myself when I am, and it came on the tails of my dad was sick and then my dad passed away and I had a lot of time to reflect. He's 70 years old and he's looking back on his life. So when I am 70 years old and I'm looking back on my life, how will I feel if I have this child, if I don't have this child? And then it was obvious. I have to have
Yeah.
this child. And so if I'm going to do that, what does the next year look like? What does my health need to look like? What do I need to do to get in line to bring in like the most optimum situation to bring a child into this world? And that was a goal that I set, targeted, hit. I mean, it wasn't like set up on this 12-week year system, but it was driven with the same vision, with the same, specific, measurable target, and I'm sure it'll continue as I set goals in raising him and everything else. But it definitely is that look back that speaks to me.
I mean, that warms my heart. Yeah. I'd love to hear it. Amazing. Well, yeah, it's sinking in how much this has enabled us to move forward into our own lives and explore our own lives and like kind of surge forward in the directions that we kind of like chose and that interest us. How it pairs wonderfully with intention. We set an intention, go after there and go after it.